Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
All right, everybody. Peace. Welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast show, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As you guys know, I'm Casuan, and we have got a wonderful show in store for you today, guys. Got a lot to cover. We are going to be covering some WNBA playoff action, and we are also going to be breaking down the comparison or the debate of who's the better player between Jalenbrunson and traeyoung, because I think that's an interesting comparison that people have been bringing up as of late, and because people are victims of recency bias, that comparison or that debate of who's better might not go in the way that you think. And we're all going to start out the show though with recent comments made by Giannisantetokounmpo and what that means for the future of Milwaukee and what that means for his future as well. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Patreon and subscribe to us. You can follow us on Patreon by going to Patreon, clicking in the search bar, and typing in GSMC Sports Network. You can find us there. Follow us there to stay up to date on all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you would like to support our network or our company, follow the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Once again, guys, none of this is possible without you guys, and we're just so grateful for all the support that you guys give us and that you show us, and for tuning into GSMC Sports to stay up to date on all of related sports network, our sports content, and it's a blessing to share you guys my thoughts and insight and analysis on the world of basketball. So that being said, guys, let's get right into it. So recent reports have come out. Well, not even reports, really, more so comments made by All-NBA player Giannis Antetokounmpo. Comments that were recently made on the 48 Minutes Believe podcast that he was a guest on. And the comments were from Giannis as follows. As long as we play and we approach the game every single day the right way and we all sacrifice for a common goal, I can see myself being with the Milwaukee Bucks for the rest of my career. Followed by, but the moment I feel like people are not committed as I am to get that golden thing in the back, talk about championship, I'm a Milwaukee Buck, but most importantly, I'm a winner. I want to win. I have to do whatever it takes for me to win, and if there's a better situation for me to win the Larry O'Brien trophy, championship trophy, I have to take that better situation. End quote. So pretty staunch comments, but truthful comments made by Giannis Antetokounmpo. This is coming after off-season where Milwaukee re-signed Jay Crowder. They traded for Malik Beasley, and they re-signed Bobby Portis, gave him an extension, and they gave an extension to Drew Holiday as well. So this is a Milwaukee team that essentially re-upped from the previous season where they had the best record in the NBA, but as you guys know, fell short in the first round of the NBA playoffs, losing 5 games to the 8th seed Miami Heat. So front office management in Milwaukee feels that they have the necessary core group of guys to contend for a championship again. And the record in the regular season last year would defend that stance. And Giannis is just making it clear to the front office that he is willing to take his talents elsewhere. And now the question becomes, is there pressure in Milwaukee to win a championship in order to maintain, to keep Giannis. And the question isn't more so is there pressure on Milwaukee, but is the pressure on Giannis as opposed to the organization? We all know that for all intents and purposes, there's only been one player in NBA history, two players I might add, that have stayed in small market, what someone considers small to mid-major markets in the NBA their entire careers, and that's Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki. And both of those are players that, specifically Tim Duncan, that won early on in their career. And those are only two examples in NBA history of superstars that stayed in small to mid-major markets entire career. And if you're Milwaukee, you almost have to expect that Giannis is going to leave elsewhere, and that he's going to, sign with another team when it's time for the free agency market, when it's time for him to be a free agent. And Giannis has never expressed commitment to staying with Milwaukee long term, which is something that he shouldn't do. He should never, especially as an athlete and this being a business, you should never commit to something that you in the future that you aren't for certain is going to happen. And Giannis has done a good job of doing that, because now it does keep Milwaukee accountable and then making right front office decisions. And it also gives Giannis leverage, and it gives him space to go out and explore his options. And it puts him in the catbird seat, honestly. So knowing that he's due or is eligible for a 3-year extension worth $173 million on September 18th, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong about that date, someone one of you guys let me know. However, I wouldn't expect him to sign that extension right away, knowing how he's done things before. He normally doesn't do negotiation or contract extension talks during the season. He normally waits to the off season to do that, which understandably so is the right way to do things, business wise. And there's a lot of, I wouldn't say there's pressure on Milwaukee, but more so pressure on Giannis to win a championship now, quote unquote another championship, because if we look at who came up short in the playoffs, Milwaukee, like we said, had the best record in the NBA, and like we just said, they re-signed their core group of guys. So now everything's in place for Giannis to contend and win another championship. And Giannis talked about our guys committed to winning, and are they willing to do what it takes? And that quote doesn't come out of nowhere. He doesn't just say that by happenstance. That tells me that there's something that Giannis sees in his teammates, not all of them, and not even as a whole, but he has seen instances where teammates have not expressed or shown full commitment to doing what it takes to win. And that's what that quote tells me. And that tells me that Giannis might use that as a reasoning for him leaving, or to justify his leaving. That's what that part of the quote tells me. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if Giannis leaves Milwaukee. I fully expect him to leave Milwaukee, whether he wins another championship or not. So there isn't pressure in that aspect, if you're the Milwaukee front office organization, to keep Giannis. You have to actually fully expect him to, and almost prepare for him to leave. And so then the question starts to become for Milwaukee: do you allow Giannis to walk for nothing, or do you perhaps trade him to get pieces back? And then that's another conversation that we can get into later on. But I fully expect Giannis to leave. You have to fully expect Giannis to leave the Milwaukee organization, because like we said before, there's only been two superstars that have stayed in mid to small market franchises throughout the entirety of their career. Like we said, that's Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki. And if you're Giannis, you're looking at teams like LA, you're looking at teams like New York, these large markets that can provide a larger fan base, a larger platform for you to be broadcasted on. And what this quote tells me is this tells me that he's almost formulating a justification for his leaving Milwaukee. So it doesn't surprise me at all if Giannis will leave. I do think he fully expects him to leave at some point, whether they win another championship or not. And so the pressure isn't on Milwaukee for them to surround the right pieces with Giannis. The pressure is on Giannis to now do something with those pieces for them to win. And that's what this quote tells me. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when he's eligible for a contract extension in a couple of days, actually. But guys, that is what we have on the recent quotes, or the recent comments made by Giannis. And in our next segment, guys, we are going to be discussing the debate, the comparison between Jalenbrunson and Traeyoung that's been pervasive this past summer on who's the better player. So we're going to cover all of that and then some, guys, in the next segment. So be sure to stick around. You're not going to miss it. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed our first segment, we broke down and covered the recent comments made by Milwaukee All-Star Giannisantetokounmpo and what his comments meant for his future and the future of the Milwaukee franchise, and whether Milwaukee should be expecting Giannis to leave at some point in the future, and whether Giannis should leave at some point in the future. Later on in the show, guys, we're going to break down some WNBA playoff action. Very exciting games from Game 1 last night that we're going to cover. And in this segment, we are going to be breaking down the comparison between Traeyoung and Jalenbrunson and what that comparison actually entails, and whether who's the better point guard, who is the better player. But before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Patreon. You can do so by going on Patreon, click on the search bar, and typing in GSMC Sports Network. You can follow us. You can find us that way. Be sure to follow us on Patreon so you can stay up to date on all of the exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can follow the link in the ticker below at streamelements.com/GSMC Once again, that's streamelements.com/GSMC None of this is possible without you guys, the fans, so we're just so grateful for all the support that you guys show us, and it is an honor to be able to present you guys with my breakdown and analysis on everything in the world of basketball. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast, GSMC College Football Podcast, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great insight and analysis. These are some of the best reporters, some of the best in the media, sports, entertainment business, and it's an honor to be working alongside next to them. So be sure to check out those shows as well if you haven't already. But with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get right into it. We have got an interesting topic we're going to be discussing in this segment. Like I said, we're going to be breaking down the comparison between Jalenbrunson and Traeyoung. And, with this comparison, I don't necessarily want to use... I don't want to use stats for this example. I just want to break it down from a completely basketball perspective, right? So we're not going to rely on stats for this. One of the reasons that Jalenbrunson is believed to be better than Traeyoung is because he plays in a big market. He plays in New York, one of the biggest markets in the NBA, and because he signed such what many considered at the time to be a questioning contract in New York, and I say questioning because people weren't entirely sure if he was worth that max deal based off how he played in Dallas. And he had that expectation, had that what some would call pressure, but more so expectations, was signing that max contract. And he exceeded those expectations by being an all-star and leading the New York Knicks to the NBA playoffs. But not just the NBA playoffs, but also beating the Cavs in 5 games in dominating fashion in the first round, while losing to the eventual Eastern Conference champs in the Miami Heat in the second round. And Jalenbrunson did all this while quite frankly, while performing up to expectations. And in the media, Jalenbrunson is not perceived as a quote-unquote bad guy or a villain or the antagonist role. So he's going to get more acclaim. He's going to get more adulation from the media. While Traeyoung, on the other hand, is a player that who many forget, due to recency bias, led the Atlanta Hawks to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021 by knocking down the aforementioned New York Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers, and taking the Milwaukee Bucks to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. And in all 3 of those series, Atlanta was the lower seeded team, so they didn't have home court advantage. And because Traeyoung, throughout the entirety of his career, even dating back to college, was always perceived as the antagonist, the villain, the bad guy. So he's always had that role, that moniker attached to his name. And so the media is less likely to give him adulation, less likely to give him praise, and more likely to be stringent upon him. But we have to remember, guys, not only is to whom much is given, much is required, but, like the old cliche or the old, saying goes from Future, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. And if you're not getting constant criticism, and if you're not getting constant quote-unquote ridicule from the sports media, then you're probably not at the level that you think you are. Notice that all great superstars get some sort of criticism. You get some sort of flack, get some sort of pushback, whether it be warranted or not. And there's levels to this. Great superstars get constant criticism. Think about the LeBron Jameses. Personally, I do believe that LeBron James doesn't get much criticism as much as people think he does. But you guys understand the point I'm saying. The LeBron James, the Kevin Durant's, the Kyrie Irvings, the Giannis's, like we talked about in the first segment, the Jokic's, the Embiid's, the Kawhi's, the Paul George's, the Jason Tatum's, the Jalen Brown's, the Jimmy Butler's, the Trey. There's levels to it in the Damian Lillard's. Though there's levels to that, the criticism in that aspect. Though some guys are coddled more by the media than others, but great superstars and superstar players get some sort of level of criticism, and that is not just applied to basketball, but that's also a little bit of a life concept, life lesson as well. That if you're not getting a lot of criticism, if you're not getting a lot of what's perceived as hatred or envy from others, then you're probably not at the level that you think you are. Because once you reach a certain level of success, it rubs people the wrong way, because it starts to activate certain insecurities within the other individual, and those individuals project their insecurities in the form of hatred, in the form of envy onto you. And so if you're not getting that level of criticism, then you're not actually where you might think you might not be where you think you are. And with that, in that concept right there, that tells me everything I need to know about who is the actual better player. And yes, I understand we can't use that sort of logic of thinking in every scenario and every concept, because there's more nuance to it. But understanding that you're not going to get, until you reach a certain level of success, you're not really going to get that type of criticism. It tells me with all I need to know about this comparison between Jalen Brunson and traeyoung, because now there's a certain level of standard that's permitted and that's attached to these guys. And so because now traeyoung has, like we said, he led a team to an Eastern Conference Finals, that standard is there. And so when Atlanta does anything below that standard is now applied to him and to traeyoung, and if he doesn't reach that standard, it's automatically considered a failure, and now people start to criticize him. And that's not to say that traeyoung doesn't deserve his criticism. He's shown instances where he has poor shot selection, and the offense or the ball sticks with him. Even with adding DeJounte Murray, the ball sticks in his hands sometimes. He didn't gel with Nate McMillan. It's questionable how he's gelling with Quinn Snyder. There are those sorts of aspects. Or he does deserve some of the criticism that he's getting, but him getting this level of criticism and vitriol tells me that he has reached that certain level of superstardom. And traeyoung, with his performance in the 2021 Eastern Conference Finals, that was reminiscent of Isaiah Thomas, the old Isaiah Thomas from the Detroit Pistons, where you have a smaller guard being the primary offensive focal point and the leader of a team, and leading the team on a deep playoff run. And his clutch performance and his ability to come up big and close out games consistently throughout the course of those of that playoff run was very reminiscent of Isaiah Thomas. And and we have to see if Jalen Brunson has that same ability to lead a team, to lead a New York Knicks team on a deep playoff run, because Jalen Brunson and the Knicks, they were the 4 seed last season. And, sorry, they were the 5 seed last season. And when Traeyoung went on his run, led the Atlanta Hawks team to the Eastern Conference Finals, they were also the 5 seed. So, it's capable. It's possible to be done. So, we need to see Jalen Brunson do it before I start to make that comparison of saying that Jalen Brunson's better than Traeyoung. It's not there yet. I would still take Traeyoung. If I had to start my franchise, I started with Traeyoung. People say that Jalen Brunson is a better point guard, better floor general than Traeyoung. I think that's questionable. That is a questionable topic. I don't think that's entirely true. We have seen that Traeyoung can be proficient when it comes to his passing. That's honestly his best attribute is his passing. And where Traeyoung struggles is his shot selection. He had a point where he had poor shot selections first when he got in the league, but then there's a time frame between 2021 and 2022 when he improved his shot selection, and that's when his efficiency increased tremendously. But then this year he kind of backslid and went back to having poor shot selection. But if he can maintain having good shot selection and keep his efficiency rating up, there's no question that Traeyoung is one of the best players in the NBA, but can be the starting point guard in the championship team. And if we're looking at that breakdown, that dynamic, I would say Traeyoung is better than Jalen Brunson. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Is Traeyoung better than Jalen Brunson, or is Jalen Brunson better than Traeyoung? Love to hear what you guys think about that. And that's what we have for this topic, for this comparison between the two players, guys. But let me know what you guys think. In our next segment, guys, we are going to be breaking down some WNBA playoff action, starting with the Suns and the Lynx. So stick around, guys. You're not going to miss any of that. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed our first two segments, we discussed the recent comments made by giannisantetokounmpo and what those comments represent in terms of where Giannis's future will be trending towards and what the future of Milwaukee's front office and franchise will be trending towards. In our second segment, we covered the debate between Jalenbrunson and Traeyoung, who's the better player. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Who's the better player between Jalenbrunson and Traeyoung? And let me know what you guys think about the comments made by Giannis Antetokounmpo. Will he spend his entire career in Milwaukee, or can you guys see him playing for somewhere else, some other franchise, another organization? Be sure to stick around for our final segment, guys. We're going to be breaking down the Game 1 matchup between the Las Vegas Aces and the Chicago Sky. And in this segment, we're going to be covering the Game 1 action recap between the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx. But before we get started, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. Be sure to follow us on Patreon as well. You can do that by going to patreon.com, go into the search bar and typing in GSMC Sports Network. You can follow us there and be subscribed to exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. We post there on a daily basis. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can follow the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Once again, that's streamelements.com/GSMC None of this is possible without you guys, the fans, and we're just so grateful for everything that you guys do and the support you guys show us. And it's an honor to be able to share with you guys on a daily basis my analysis and my insight on the world of basketball. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and hop right into this segment. So Game 1 occurred last night between the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx. The game took place in Connecticut. We know that Connecticut has home court advantage in the series, and Connecticut won by a score of 90-60, led by DeWanna Bonner, who had 17 points, Alyssa Thomas, who had 15 points, Tiffany Hayes, who had 14 points, and rounded out by Rebecca Allen, who had 15 points as well. Alyssa Thomas had 15 points, 10 assists, and 3 rebounds. And DeWanna Bonner also had a double-double with 17 points and 15 rebounds. From Minnesota, they're led by Kayla McBride, who had 16 points in 38 minutes, followed by Nafisa Collier, who had 14 points. While rookies Diamond Miller and Dorka Juhas both struggled from the floor, each of them having 5 points respectively. And if you saw our preview, guys, our coverage for this first round matchup between Minnesota and Connecticut, I discussed why I felt that Minnesota was going to win this series in 3 games, but I also made it very clear that Connecticut was going to win Game 1 and win it convincingly. And it's because of the championship experience and pedigree that Connecticut has, despite them losing Jonquel Jones to New York, and also Bree Jones being out for this season due to an Achilles injury. So I fully expected Connecticut to win this series, and I expected Minnesota to struggle in this game, in Game 1, because they have a lack of experience. Especially with their rookies Diamond Miller and Dorka Juhas, who are key components of their offensive firepower, of their offensive sort of concept and dynamic. And people have to understand, as rookies or as a younger team, when you come into the playoffs, your thought process is, in terms of how you're going to perform, you're either so naive and so new to the environment that you don't grasp how big the spotlight is. And sometimes that sort of ignorance can have a positive impact. You don't understand the weight of the moment, so you just kind of you're just doing what you normally do, so there's less pressure with the known of the the gravitas of the moment. And so because you don't know how big the moment is, you kind of just do what you're doing, and that lack of pressure makes you more comfortable and you're less tight and rigid. However, if you are aware of the moment and how big the moment is and how much pressure there is, that can sometimes stifle you and make you stiff and make you become rigid, and now you're overthinking a lot. And so that's normally the thought process as a young team or as rookies when you're coming into your first playoff series. That's what happens. The pressure either gets to you in that aspect, or you're so new to the moment you can't even fully grasp how much pressure there is, so you're just playing freely how you normally do. And so this Minnesota team had a gut punch, a wake-up call to how different playoff basketball is compared to regular season basketball, and just how it is in the NBA. There's a huge difference, and that shift is sometimes hard to turn on, especially with your first game. And you could tell watching Minnesota play, they couldn't adjust right away to the physicality that Connecticut was able to impose. We talked about how Minnesota is a team that likes to get up and down the court, but we know that just like in the NBA, same in the WNBA, the pace of the game slows down and you start to play more in the half-court set. So now that Minnesota has seen this, I do think they'll be able to adjust, and they'll find ways to get out on the break, or maybe not on a fast break, but maybe be able to initiate secondary breaks by crashing the boards more. This is a team that, in game one, Connecticut out-rebounded Minnesota by over 15 rebounds. So, Connecticut did a good job limiting second chance opportunities from Minnesota. And Minnesota is going to now game plan going into the next game. They're going to have one extra person crash the boards as opposed to just two players. They're going to have three people crash the boards at all times. And they're doing that because they want to be able to start the breaks. They want to be able to get second chance opportunities. And I think Minnesota is going to be able to adjust to the physicality and what they saw against Connecticut. And like I said, the offensive firepower in Minnesota, I do think it's going to be able to be successful and get back in rhythm. And we're talking about Nafisa Collier. She only shot 5 for 12 from the field. And we're talking about Nafisa Collier, who is a top 5 player in WNBA. It's very rare that she's going to score 14 points in a playoff game. I think she'll be able to get back on track, knowing that they're going back to Minnesota as well. Nothing has changed about my prediction with this matchup. I still have Minnesota winning in 3 games, and if anything, we're right on schedule with what we expected to happen in this series, with Connecticut winning this game convincingly in game 1. But it doesn't change my prediction at all. Everything is going how I expected it to go so far. So, with that being said, guys, let's look at the other WNBA playoff matchup between the Las Vegas Aces and Chicago Sky from Game 1 that also occurred last night. We're gonna cover that in our next segment, guys. So be sure to stick around. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed what we discussed earlier in the show, we talked about the recent comments made by Milwaukee Bucks Giannis Antetokounmpo, and what those comments mean moving forward for both Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks front office and franchise. We also broke down the comparison between Traeyoung and Jalenbrunson, who is actually the better player and who I feel is the better point guard as well. And we also discussed, we recapped Game 1 between the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx, and why I feel my prediction has not changed for Minnesota Lynx winning that series in 3 games. But in this segment, guys, I want to cover the Game 1 match between the Las Vegas Aces and the Chicago Sky. But before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon. You can do so by going to patreon.com, going to the search bar, and typing in gsmcsportsnetwork.com. You can find us that way and follow us. We post exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else on a daily basis. And if you'd like to support our company and our network, you can do so by following the ticker following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC None of this is possible without you guys, the fans. So we're just so grateful for all the support and the love that you show us, and we just thank you for trusting us with all of your needs for your sports intake. So with that being said, guys, let's get right into it. So let's recap Game 1 of the Aces and Sky. Quite frankly, there's not much to cover that's groundbreaking in this series, because this is kind of on par with what we discussed in the preview video on Tuesday, where we talked about this series wouldn't be particularly too close. As you guys know, yesterday the Aces won 87-59. They were led by Chelsea Gray, who had 20 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds, followed by Jackie Young, who had 18 points, 6 assists, and 1 rebound, followed by Kelsey Plum, who had 16 points, 2 assists, 1 rebound, and A'ja Wilson, who had 14 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist. And also coming off the bench, they had Alicia Clark, who had 13 points, 2 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 steal. So, this is as we talked about in the preview video, Las Vegas Aces, I still consider them to be the best team in the WNBA, despite them losing 5 games in August to close out the regular season. We have seen time and time again that you can't double on anybody when you play Vegas, because they do such a good job of rotating either to the weak side or to the open spot or to the next lane, to the next fill spot on those doubles. So it's so hard to double on A'ja Wilson. You can't necessarily double off of Chelsea Young because she's an excellent shooter. Same with Kelsey Plum and Chelsea Gray. Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray. You can't double off any of them. And this is nothing new. And then defensively, they were tremendous. They held Chicago to 33% from the field. Kalia Copper had 15 points. Courtney Williams had 9 points, followed by 7 points by Marina Mabrey and 4 points from Elizabeth Williams. And also Alana Smith of Chicago also had 8 points as well. And the Chicago Sky team is going to struggle to score against Vegas, one because of the physicality in the interior. They don't have much size to contend with Vegas, and Vegas does a good job of limiting second chance points with their rebounding, but also Vegas plays amazing defense in the half court set, and they've done so throughout the entirety of the regular season. And this is a Chicago Sky team that struggles in the half court and struggled in the half court throughout the regular season, and they have struggled to get consistent offense from their supporting cast when Kalia Copper is either getting double teamed or isn't having a great shooting performance. And we saw that was exactly what occurred in Game 1 last night. That Kalia Copper struggled from the field, shot 5 of 14, and no one else from the Sky was able to pick up that slack. And and Vegas was able to impose their will on the glass, and also they were able to, because they controlled the board so well, it allowed them more scoring opportunities, and it allowed them to get out on the break more times than Chicago. And we know the Vegas likes to get out on the break, and even in the playoffs where the pace tends to slow down, because Vegas does a great job of controlling the glass, they're still able to get out on the break and get easy scoring opportunities. And I don't think much is going to change for my prediction for this series. I still have Vegas winning in a sweep, and I think they're going to close things out over the weekend. But looking ahead for Chicago, it'll be interesting to see what type of pieces that Chicago can bring in order to complement Kalia Copper, who just signed an extension. Be interesting to see what Chicago could do in terms of bringing in another point guard to ease the playmaking responsibilities for Kalia Copper. I think of a Skylar Diggins, who has championship experience and who is, for all intents and purposes, based on what I've heard, is disgruntled in Phoenix. So finding a way to package her in a deal or bring her to Chicago, that'd be an interesting compared matchup with her and Kalia Copper. Perhaps Mariah Jefferson out of Phoenix as well. Another great point guard who can ease the playmaking responsibility as well off of Kalia Copper. But those are these things to look at and think about moving forward for if you're the Chicago Sky, because I don't see this series going past 2 games. I think this is going to be a sweep, like I said, for the Aces. But guys, that is it for our coverage of WNBA playoff action, and that is it for our show today. I know it was a quick show today, but we were able to cover a lot of things, and thank you so much for tuning in. And if you haven't already, guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in GSMC Sports Network. GSMC Sports Network. You can follow us there and stay up to date on all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our company and our network, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMC Sports Network./tip. And if you haven't already, guys, be sure to check out our other sports shows as well, the GSMC Baseball Podcast, GSMC College Football Podcast, the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great content, insight on the sports that they're covering, and so they are some of the best in the business. So it's an honor to be working with them as well. And it's an honor to be to talk with you guys, the fans. And let me know what you guys think right in the comment section below. What you guys think about what's going to happen with Giannisantetokounmpo and what's going to happen in these WNBA playoff matchups. And let me know what you guys think in the comment section about who's the better player between Jalenbrunson and Traeyoung. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. But that's all I have for today, guys. We'll be back again same time tomorrow to close out the week. Continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and until next time, guys, peace.